the right sort of trains its viewers, its followers to sort of imagine that everyone's an economist, and not only an economist, but like a millionaire and an economist. So it's like, well, the economy must have growth and it must be this and it must be that. And it's like, none of you guys know what you're talking about, and you're all poor. like you, so, I do want to ask you, how, when you think about wealth, it seems like in this last year and a half, like, yes, it is concentrated very much so at the top. I mean, I actually don't know if inequality has gotten worse or not, but it seems like the government programs, the stimulus money is the only thing that's prevented inequality from getting just completely out of control.
I
Unusually for the last. I have the stat handy. The combined wealth of billionaires went up 55% during the pandemic.
Yeah, I was going to say that while the very bottom and middle of the distribution have been doing somewhat better because of the stimulus stuff, the people at the very top have been doing really, really, really much better because the financial markets basically have just been getting richer and richer, and then you have all these GameStop things like that where people are trying to get involved in that racket, but it's not going to work for them. It's working for the elites very well though.
So I think it's important to understand, like, when we talk about growth and when you hear GDP and when you hear, like, okay, all this wealth being created, to understand that that does not represent you, your community, your family, your well-being at all. It is growth for the sake of a very, very select few that never trickles down. So, I mean, I think that there's this, like, our economy is constantly set up against these barometers like GDP, like the stock market, like unemployment, which is, I know, even just a fraction of the whole picture in and of itself too, even though it's supposed to be representative of working people. It's only people who are actively searching for jobs. And we know especially women have in droves left the workforce under the pandemic and following it.
Yeah, well, women, have all these care responsibilities. Men did a bit more, it seems, over the last year and a half, but nowhere near as much as women have been doing, and as they always do, but they have to do more and more of it. When GDP grows, it doesn't really necessarily mean much of anything. It all depends upon how it's distributed. If it goes into wages and public spending and humane pursuits, okay, good. But if a building burns down because of climate change and then gets rebuilt, and that adds to GDP, that's not necessarily very good. While a shrinking GDP is good for almost no one, a rising GDP isn't necessarily going to be good for the masses.
So I wanted to sort of follow on that, like part of why I was excited to have you on is like so much of how we think about the economy is sort of like it just defaults to this very sort of free market neoliberal perspective, and I feel like including me, like a lot of people on the left sort of don't have the tools to think about the economy in a different way, and like in California, we, the public sector budget is pretty good, partly because of inequality. Like we have enough rich people that we can tax the rich people. And so that's sort of, when we talk about stimulating the economy, a lot of it is like, let's let rich people make some more money and then we could tax some of the crumbs and redistribute that into social programs. And is that accurate? Do you have a sense of like what a vision of economic growth or economic development would look like that wasn't based on letting rich people get richer and then trying to, transfer some of that through taxes?
Yeah, we're similar in New York City. We like many cities, we have a lot of poor people, but we also have a lot of rich people, and we're very concerned that they went away and may not come back. And so we have to make sure we're going to put out the welcome mat to get the rich people back from the Hudson Valley and the Hamptons, just so they can, fund our basic services. But if you look back, it was capitalist America, but back in the 50s and 60s, rich people paid more taxes. The distribution of income and wealth was just nowhere near as lopsided as it is. And, that was certainly a much more, generally more humane way to run things. But, as for what a, better economy would look like, we need really, I think, and it's hard to imagine how we can get there from here, or what the institutional arrangements would look like to make this happen. But this is what I want to think about: is more about quality and less about quantity, and enjoying our lives and having good, nutritious food and safe and affordable housing, and healthcare that is not a site of profit and exploitation and misery, but it actually takes care of people. Those are the principles we want to organize on. It's really, really hard to get there because everything that we do is organized around the principle of profit maximization. And any human need that is satisfied is just a side effect of being able to make some capitalist richer. And it would take an awful lot of revolutionary transformation to change that. But it's encouraging that people seem to be more open to thinking about these things than they did 5 years ago. And one of the reasons that elites are very concerned about the Biden spending plans, regardless of the content in themselves, is that they move in a different direction. They change the nature of what we talk about, and they raise expectations among people. People start getting, for the last 2 or 3 months, we've been getting a $250 check in the mail because we have a kid. And if they start sending out child allowances, if they start sending us more generous unemployment benefits, if we start getting stimulus payments when times get tough, people say, hey, this is pretty good. Can we do more of this? And elites realize that you give an inch, people are going to want to take a yard, and that must be stopped.
The rich have not been defeated till they're running for their lives. Agree, disagree, Doug?
I think that's a great principle. Yes.
I think that for sure. No, and that's why Republicans are super scared, and obviously corporate Democrats and others, not just Sinema and Manchin, are scared of what this Build Back Better Act could have. Right? It's like,
well, I think Sinema and Manchin are like the taking the hit publicly for a lot of senators who don't want to step forward and take the heat. I mean, Sinema seems to enjoy it, and Manchin, both in different ways, but they seem to like this fuck things up position that they're in.
I mean, it's just crazy.
But there's a lot of support for their position.
Yes, and you talked about the child tax credit that you both are receiving right now. It is insane to me that Democrats, that Biden isn't saying every single day that he can speak, because some days are slower than others, that he's the one who's giving you this money, that he is like, and I don't even know, I don't think his name is on the check. I remember how Trump's name was on the first stimulus check, but it's like Biden needs to tout that out every single time. And, I think there's this whole like, oh, Democrats are screwed in 2022. I would agree with that, but only if they stop hiding the wins that they have delivered on. Only if they stop hiding all the things that they've actually delivered and done for the American people.
My Biden bucks came with aviators in the envelope, so I knew who it was.
Wow, Louis DeJoy took mine away.
Yeah.
Fuck that guy. Fuck that guy. Question for you, Doug. I know we have to move on to our final segment, but there's an idea that like we kind of can't do anything unless we rein in the 1%, like that we really need their tax money to fund our social programs. Do you agree with that? Do you disagree? It feels like we're stuck.
Yeah. Well, I think they need to be eliminated as a political force. And I'm not sure that taxing rich people is an ongoing source of money. If you start taxing, that money is going to disappear. So we didn't have billionaires in the United States, really, to speak of, until the Reagan tax cuts. And then it became possible to accumulate huge fortunes because they were so lightly taxed. So if you go back and look when Forbes magazine first did its 400 list of the richest people in the country, there were no billionaires, or maybe 1 or 2 billionaires on that. It was just a few $100 million. And now the poorest person on the Forbes 400 list has several $1 billion to his or her name. So it'd be great to tax that 1%. But I think the point of taxing them would be to tax them out of existence. I don't think they're an ongoing source of revenue, but it's a form of expropriation, which I think would be a great thing.
What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. Do it.